So, here we are, game number 2 of this semi-final. It's the ESL Play Starbow tournament, and spawning in the top left-hand position as the purple Zerg, it is Heusa. And his opponent to the top right, the yellow Protoss, it's Cube. So, this is some fun times. And the reason it's fun is because it's a semi-final. It's game number 2. If Cube wins this one, he goes 2-0 up and advances to the finals. That's where the honour and the glory potentially lay. Getting first place is what they are playing for. There are no esports dollars on the line. Lots of talk of Dogcoin though. Maybe we'll be getting some of those, we can hope. Anyway though, game 1, let's talk a little bit about that because it was fairly funky. Game number 1 saw some interesting plays from Cube. He went for Corsairs early on. Corsairs are a flying unit available to Protoss in Starbow, which deal huge amounts of damage to air. By huge amount of damage, they deal 10 DPS, because they, or just under 10 DPS. They have 2 5 damage attacks, basically a second, give or take a tiny bit. That meant that he went Overlord hunting. Literally any Overlord on the map, boom. There was even Overlords hugging over a Spore Crawler, and 12 Corsairs came in and it was just like, boom. It was like chucking. Basically, you know when you have a really powerful shredder, right? And this is making me feel old that I'm using a shredder as an analogy to describe my point. Right? A really good shredder. And you put a bit of paper in there and it goes, and then it's gone and that paper is no more. That's what happened to Heusa's Overlords when Cube came in with that many Corsairs. He then got +1 for them and it was just hilarious. Anyway, Forge first opening, once again from Cube, same as he did last game. And I don't mind that. It's fairly good. It works well. And, well, for the time being, this is a fairly normal game. I was kind of expecting Cube to do something cheesy. Proxy 2 gate is super effective. He may have actually gone for something cheesy if he scouted his opponent first, but he's scouting his opponent last, unfortunately, so that Forge first wasn't able to go into a cannon rush like it could have been. Ah, the times that could have, should have, potentially would have been. But, alas, this is now going to be a bit more normal. Although the one thing I'll say from game 1, I did ask this question when I was actually in that game, is even though it was quite long, I think it was over 30 minutes, it really didn't seem that way. And now some of that might be because it's new and exciting Starbow. But I think there was just such a more constant level of aggression and interaction between the two players. They wasn't just turning up, oh my god, a cannon rush! Cannon rush, cannon rush. I cut myself short when a cannon rush happens, I get that excited. But yeah, anyway. This is all looking good at the moment. And well, this is probably going to go undetected by Heusa because he's got no Overlord over here. Overlords are very slow. Overseers are just as slow as well. Even though they are hatch text now, it just means that you've got detection earlier. Still though, a single probe making his way forward. The other probe waiting patiently at the third base. Very greedy play from Heusa at the moment. Has got his spawning pool up. Has got gas income. Now, I'm not entirely sure on this, but I'm fairly sure in Starbow you can actually have 4 drones in gas and it works, because you see that there's actually one comes out before the next one goes in, so 4 would work and it will give you slightly better income, although I'm not sure if it's completely worthwhile. Anyway, Ling's still bouncing about, just trying to take a look, trying to see if there's any Stargates coming down. Unfortunately not though, 2 cannons are on their way, and these cannons are going to finish pretty much as the hatchery finishes, so there's going to have to be very quick reactions from Heusa. He has got it selected, but I don't know if he saw that. Oh, it's going to finish! Ah, oh, that's bad times for Heusa. Literally finishing as that cannon first hits. Bad times. So, metabolic boost coming down. Lings are going to be on their way, but they'll struggle to stop this. This hatchery almost certain to die at this stage. It's a bit of a sad moment. However, Ling's still running across the map, having a bit of a good time. Lair coming down nice and early. This opens up the options for a Spire, but also for the Roach one, which we haven't seen yet. The Spire, though, is what I'm thinking. After the Corsairs did so much damage in game number 1, I'm suspecting Heusa going to want to get some Scourge out, otherwise known as Flying Banelings. They are literally Flying Banelings. That's the model for them. It's awesome. Just to deal with that, just so he doesn't keep losing those Overlords time and time again. This third hatch, though, unfortunately, is going to go down. And all in all, this isn't the greatest fun. Now, Spire, of course, is coming down. So Scourge going to be probably on their way. Mutalisks also the option there. That's all good. Getting some Mutalisks will make me very happy, because I like how Mutalisks work in Starbow. They can stack up and they stay stacked up due to the way the pathing works and units move. And that means you can get some very cool snipes up, but it also makes you incredibly vulnerable to storms. We saw a game earlier on this evening where a storm hit a group of Mutalisks and everything died. My god, it was painful to watch. Anyway, Corsairs are being produced once again, so we're going to see this cool, slightly trolly strategy from Cube. I say it's a trolly strategy only because of how much damage it does to Overlords. It's hilarious and terrifying simultaneously. But yeah, Twilight Council is on its way down, so this isn't an all-in or anything like that. Corsairs just going to be checking around for any Overlords that are on the map. They're all hiding. I wonder why. And yeah, more Corsairs getting produced, plus 1 ground weapons on its way. The Spy are nearly done though, so I really doubt that the Corsairs are going to deal as much damage as we saw in game number 1. That's for sure. Injects coming down. For those of you who didn't see any of the earlier games, injects work completely differently in Starbow compared to in StarCraft 2 normal. Rather than spawning 4 larvae after 40 seconds, they increase larva production by 65%, but a hatchery still can only hold 3 larvae at any given time. So, we do have the first Mutalisks in production. Now, there's been some discussion in my Twitch chat on how effective Corsairs are up against Mutalisks. And I haven't actually got a definitive answer yet. Some people are saying they're amazing because they deal splash damage, but I haven't actually seen any of that splash damage. And the thing that makes me doubt it is they deal half their damage to Mutas because they only deal 50% damage to light because of their explosive damage type. That's what makes them so effective up against armored units such as Overlords. However, there is a lot of Scourge coming across. As I mentioned previously, these are literally flying Banelings. As if you needed to be terrified of Banelings anymore, they now fly in Starbow. There's also the normal ground waddling ones. The Corsairs trying to stay somewhere safe. Mutalisk coming in. Of course, Mutalisk can morph into Devourer and also a Guardian. The Guardian's a heavy assault flyer. Meanwhile, the Devourer is an anti-air flyer. So that can come down. It does require the Greater Spire though. Meanwhile, these Mutas dealing some good damage. They are very effective against a lot of stuff, and unfortunately the Corsairs are going to struggle to come in. Corsairs dealing some nice damage there. Obviously, in such superior numbers, they're going to be very effective. The Scourge, though, zoning out all of those Corsairs should there be any attempt to move over. Also, the Scourge sitting right on top of that Stargate as well. Corsairs trying to come over and attempt to get some cannons down, but for the moment, these Mutalisks being devastatingly effective. The Scourge still defending the air as much as they can. They are literally flying Banelings as we see their massive detonation goes down, and suddenly all of the Corsairs dead, but all of the Scourge also down, and that now means the Mutalisks have to go up against them alone. And it does appear that actually splash damage splash damage definitely isn't done. Like 100% isn't done. If it is, it's a minute. And as a result, Mutalisks do trade relatively well up against Corsairs. So, Mutalisks now tearing through the mineral line. There isn't that many left though, so they do have to be a little bit careful. Corsairs taking not very much damage up against the Mutalisks. They have a lot of shields and health, 180 health compared to Mutalisks 120. Scourge though, they deal a huge amount of damage per hit, 110, pretty scary. So something you want to be very careful of. They also do a 20% splash. So the Mutalisks have managed to rack up a good number of kills, 14 in total. Worker counts are generally lower in Starbow compared to that of vanilla StarCraft 2, and the reason for that is because each worker returns so many more units. But still, Mutalisks coming back. We've got a ninja expansion coming down here from Heusa, taking the bottom right hand base. Very unlikely to get scouted. A few zealots are doing their utmost to get some damage done. Brave little soldiers doing anything that they can. Unfortunately, the extent to the damage done is not significant, and that simply results in very little getting achieved. So, more Corsairs are still being produced. The +1 flyer weapons on its way down. Upgrades do take what appears to be an eternity to produce in Starbow. 240 seconds. Very significant. And it does mean that you're basically waiting an eon before you can actually use them. But once they do come into effect, especially on the Corsairs, they give Corsairs +1 attack per... +1 damage per attack. But of course with a 0.53 attack speed, that's gigantic. So, the Corsairs now chasing down the Mutalisks, trying to get some more damage done. There's a decent number of Corsairs now, 7 up against 8 Mutas. And I suspect that's where they start getting very effective. But Scourge coming in from behind. This is where some good damage could get done. Unfortunately, you can't manually detonate Scourge, which is why you can't just explode there. One detonation does go off though, managing to close it in. And with that, quite a few Corsairs take a lot of damage. +1 shields coming down, that's also going to benefit the Corsairs. But for the moment, this game looking a lot closer. Cube actually slightly behind at this stage, due to losing many resources. Viper Nest rather, is on its way out here for Heusa. That's going to really help in terms of getting some air spellcasters. Also, the Lurker Den now completed. Heusa has effectively used Lurkers up against Protoss previously, but against Skytoss, they aren't going to be too effective. But there is a transition coming to more of a ground-based army at the moment from Cube. As the Templar Archives and more gateways are added in, that's going to give some good production. Remember, of course, these are gateways, not warp gates. Warp gate tech is much later in the tech tree. Actually, can't be researched until your Templar Archives is finished. But in addition, it also doesn't quite work the same. I haven't quite worked out the difference yet because I've not actually seen anyone research it as of yet. And the tooltip doesn't really give much more of an explanation. It just says that you can warp them in. And yeah, even on the warp gate, it just says that you can warp stuff in at the gateway. But I think the cooldown for it is very much different, or the way that they warp in. So that can make it a much more interesting mechanic that isn't such guaranteed. And that's actually one of the really nice things about Starbow compared to vanilla StarCraft 2, and one of the appeals many people find in it is there isn't these essential things that we saw perhaps in traditional StarCraft. You've got no hard counters, no, well, that just wins. So you get longer games that are much more action-packed. There's a much bigger reward to being the aggressor. Being brave, being confident, being on the offensive actually pays off well because it gives you the map control to secure up bases. But also sneaky things like taking ninja expansions can work out incredibly effectively too. And that's what we're seeing Heusa do here. So, those Scourge flying in. Unfortunately, a decent number of cannons are on the ground, and my goodness, that is a hell of a lot. Of course, there's 17 there, 18 there. Instantly, the Mutalisks just melt. And with that, we're seeing only a ground-based army. Unfortunately for Cube, he doesn't have much on the ground to defend with. Corsairs do not have a lift or anything like that. They only attack air, and that means that they're limited in what they can do. They are going on the offensive now, though. They're going to probably try and find some Overlords to mash their way through. The +1 air weapons upgrade is completed, which means they deal 6 damage per head, and you can see how effective that is now as Overlords are torn apart. Heusa getting hugely supply blocked. But Hydras are still knocking at his door. Some Speedlings are there too, and this resulting in a lot of damage being achieved. But in a very smart play by Cube, he produces a significant number of Dark Templar. They're hacking and slashing their way through these Hydralisks, and without any form of protection with his army, Heusa going to be losing a lot. He's also down to just 20 supply. 100 supply over his cap. That causing some problems. Yes, he's producing more at the moment, but the Corsairs just picking off basically everything that they come into. Cube, though, realizing he's not going to be come back. GG's out, and Heusa levels out this series 1-1, and that means we get the ace game in the semi-final.